Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Can I Be Blunt? I am Mistress Danielle Blunt, and I'm joined today by Goddess Gabrielle to talk about latex and perversion. Welcome. I'm so excited to chat with you. I've been perving your content, and there's so much latex and beautifully, consistently put out content that I'm super excited to chat with you. And one of the first questions that I like to ask people is a little bit about how they found their way into kink, whether it be personal or professional. Yeah, because you seem so excited about so many different things in kink with the content that you're putting out there, and I'm sort of wondering how you wound up where you are.
Um, so first, thank you so much for having me on because I feel like I have a lot to say. Um, and I feel like I feel like I have a lot of experience, but yet I'm still learning. Like I feel like I'm learning every day, even beyond like sex work. Like I feel like I'm learning more about myself. Like I feel like my kinks and perversions, have expanded so much, over the years. So, um, basically, how I got started, it's a little taboo. Um, but I don't know. Have you seen my sister, Mistress Moxie? Have you seen me post with her?
No.
Okay. So my sister, Mistress Moxie, we have a 9 year age gap. She's 9 years older than me. And I did not know that I had a sister until I was 13 years old. And I met her whenever I was 18. And one of the first things that we discussed actually was like sexuality, like asking each other like, "Oh, are you bi? Are which turned into like her kind of telling me about her own kink journey. And with that, I was like, okay, that's pretty interesting. And I have always been pretty sexually charged from I would say probably as an adolescent, honestly. Um, and that kind of segued into me finding out that like, okay, I think I might be into this stuff. Uh, and I started out subbing. I met this guy on FetLife actually, and we had like went to this drag show, this drag show bar play in Louisville, Kentucky. And afterwards, like that was we played in his like mini dungeon, and I was subbing, and it was my first time ever in a spreader bar. Like it was one of the most intense moments of my life. And although I had a good time, I knew that being submissive wasn't for me. I was very envious that he got to do these things to me and I couldn't do it to him. And so that's kind of what started. And then I started doing, sex work on the side, like very in small amounts. I wouldn't even consider myself a sex worker at that point. I probably just did sex work, like selling panties from like Craigslist, like guys, and really, yeah. Anyway, I'm rambling. That's how
No,
I got started.
no, I feel like there's so much there. That's so interesting and so different than most of the stories that I hear when I'm asking people about how they found their way into kink. It's it's very interesting, and I feel like such a unique thing to share with a sibling. And I don't know, I feel like there there's both is an interesting kink genetic? Is it socialized? Is it contagious? Hearing you talk about getting more and more perverted, the more and more that experience that you have, I feel like all these kind of taboo things to talk about, it there's no way to detangle what comes from what, but it's definitely interesting to think about. So thank you for sharing that. That's super interesting. And then I wouldn't say that I started as a sub, but I did have old guard classical training where it was earning your leathers and subbing.
Wow.
So I would first start subbing, or I would first start doming when I earned a pair of leather boots, and I'd wear nothing but a pair of leather boots to dom. And it I always knew that I wanted to dom, but I was such a glutton for experience that I'm like, okay, cool, I'll learn it in my body. It's fine. Like,
Yeah.
just like eager for like any experience. And I also just love what you said about your first experience subbing, you wish that it was you doming you, because I feel like for me, doming myself, like I'm the dom that I want to submit to. And the fact that
Yes.
I can't make
Exactly.
that a reality for myself in that specific way has always, always bothered me. Um, yeah, so there's so much that I guess at what point did you like make a move towards like your incarnation as Goddess Gabrielle and like being online, like having like, like I feel like latex is part of your branding and like this very like, well, I guess both, how would you like describe your style of domination and like how did you kind of move to where you are in your career?
I think when I first started, I was definitely more like identifying with being more of like a mommy dom. I used to do these little story time videos, and OG subs will remember this. I used to sit in my little Star Wars nook and read these like bedtime stories, and it was usually like femdom oriented, like a historical or like fiction or erotica. That was definitely like I was very passionate about like lifestyle domination. And I still have that incorporated even with like my professional persona. But I think I evolved more, especially now, into, I would say, primarily a sensual sadist. Um, Traditional BDSM will always be like a part of me, and it means a lot to be able, like, for example, I just finished a collab with Mistress Jane, who switches, and she's so creative and so open to anything that pops into my head, and having these like specific fantasies come to life. I had her in my hanging leather cage, so we had her suspended from the ceiling, and I literally had punching gloves and like punching her, like a form of corporal punishment, a form of impact play. And while introducing exercise into it, I'm rambling, but so like from going to mommy dom to like more sensual sadist, I feel like it's once again like a progression of perversions. Like those things turn me on. I like creative scenes, and yeah. Anyway, I'm rambling,
No,
but
no, no, not
that's
rambling.
another
Or if
progression.
you're rambling, I'm here with you. I love the term progression of perversion is so fun. I feel like I like definitely identify as a mommy dom and found it kind of like, so I've been in the lifestyle and pro doming for around like 15 or 16 years. I found it like quite young as well. I like found the house that I trained at when I was 18, and by the time I was 19 I was like fully embedded in like this underground lifestyle, and just like as eager as I could for more information. And I feel like, when you are lifestyle and when you are in the industry for longer, you'll find things that like you really like, and then maybe you lose a little bit of enchantment with a specific thing if you like do a little bit too much of it. And I think what's so interesting and fun specifically about like, I think content creation too, and like the persona and the archetype you create online is the ability to shift within it, and that there's like no fixed, like you don't need to stick to a fixed identity within your career as
Exactly.
a dom. There's like lots of space for evolution and for growth. And I loved what you were saying about that, and like the perverted story time is something that I also do. I really love. I feel like mommy, there's something so special about mommy energy, and I read a story once, and it was that they just didn't have that experience as a kid, and it was like able to like repattern some of their earlier experiences to like getting to have like a mommy who read to them. And it it can like add this, like it can both be like very nurturing or add this like erotic element to the mommy dynamic. And I think, I don't know, the sensual domination from mommy dom makes a lot of sense, a lot of sense,
Yeah.
because BDSM can be like so vast and varied. You can be a fetishist, you can be into like this specific um kink. And I don't know, to me, like I identify as a pervert. When people like ask about what I'm into, I'm like, I'm a pervert. Like it doesn't matter to
Exactly.
me, right? Like I play well with others because I'm interested in that creativity of like, what are you bringing to the scene and what can we like co-create together, which sounds like really similar, and like why it's so exciting to play with someone like Mistress Jane, who's like just down to clown, like down to fuck around and like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, she's a legend. She took it. It was an intense scene. She killed it.
How do you like relate to creativity in the content that you're making or like the scenes that you're doing? Like what for me, I love when someone either has a very specific idea but is not attached to the outcome. So like they're not like giving me a script or something like that, but I love having like, you know, very niche fetishes. I'm thinking of someone that I a submissive that I saw in person who, you know, wanted to be like submerged in an ice bath and like held. And I'm just like, you know, that's not my specific kink, but it was such an erotic experience for me. And like getting off on also like their interest in it and being able to push their interest in it felt like this very like collaborative. So I'm like, you bring me the raw materials and I will create the Sistine Chapel for you. And I'm curious like how you think of creativity within the context of a scene.
I honestly, I'm so down to try so many things, but whenever I'm in the scene doming, I think back to how I felt as a submissive. And then I feel like depending on what kind of scene it is, I'm very verbally charged in scenes. Like I'm spitting out shit all the time, and I'm almost like narrating how they probably should be or are probably experiencing, and I'm like building off of that and like really like pushing in, um, and based on like if they're being like super reactive, like in a good way, you know, like okay, I'm in the right like spot with that, and but like I don't know, it's like I never know what you never know exactly how a scene is going to go sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I probably most of the time, right? Like I'm so down for oh my stream light died. That's okay. Um
I'll pause it
I
real
feel like
quick.
I'm
Cut that.
okay. Thank you. So um yeah, so with any everybody else's creativity, I think you have to be collaborative to make magic. I feel like you can't like really script out anything, and I think being open to other people's creativity is where the magic happens. I don't know if that answered the question.
No, it does. And it also makes me think of another question of like the intuitive nature of doming. I feel like some of what you're talking about is creativity, and some of what you're talking about is like being able to like fall into that flow state where you like know what's happening for your submissive in a way that they're like just beginning to integrate. And I'm curious like both as someone who's like collaborating with other people or like seeing subs potentially in person, like how you utilize your intuition, and then how you maybe translate that. So the two separate questions, like in person, and then how you translate that intuition to like bring someone somewhere in a clip. Because I am more new to content creation. At the start of the pandemic, I took like a veer into more heavy content creation. And as someone who loves that like collaborative nature of in person sessions or like video calls and Skype calls, of being able to feed off of each other's energy, it's something that I've sometimes found difficult to translate. And I've always had the most success with like customs, like with specific things. Like if I'm making something with someone in mind, if like I have a submissive two submissives I've trained as like human tripods, and so like I can just like spew, like go into my flow state of like they're One of them was like,
Yeah.
"Oh my god, the things you say are so amazing." I'm like, I have no memory of what I say when I am in like an erotic, like dirty talk headspace. Like, I cannot be held responsible for the shit that comes out of my mouth in those moments. But I guess, yeah, I'm curious, like, how you use your intuition when you're like working with someone's body, and then how you might translate that for content.
That's a really good question. um, Kind of whenever I'm filming like let's say like a general population video, like if I'm going to put it on like a clip site, whatever the theme, let's say humiliation, just like super basic like humiliation, I once again will be like, I bet you're so, like for example, I'll be like, I bet you're so embarrassed that like you're leaking to this, but like your self acceptance brought you here and now you're indulging. Like that's a good thing. Like um almost
Mommy
like
dom.
condescending mommy dom. Like yeah, like yeah, yeah, that's my thing. And just once again like just reflecting on how am I supposed to be making them feel and what are they probably feeling, and if those two I think are aligning, then I think it's good, and I just keep you know um going off of that. I hope I answered that question correctly.
No, yeah. So there's, it sounds like that, like, well, I don't know, maybe you can speak a little bit more to that. Is it like, are you thinking about, like, as a mommy dom, are you thinking of like yourself in previous submissive experiences? Are you thinking of a submissive? Like, how do you feel like you know? I guess my question is, how do you know what to say when there's not a submissive there in front of you? Because I feel like we talked a little bit about like the collaborative, and then like what is happening when you're like alone in the studio creating content to, like, I think of the content that I make as like a giant web to bring people into my lair, and so I create content with kind of that as the fulcrum, and then like whatever activity it is, it has that intention. And I'm curious, like, for you, how do you keep that like creative spark or that intuition in the content that you're making?
um I think creative spark, I will think about what would turn me on. Um, what turns me on, what would turn them on. The other day me and Mr. Shane were talking about crypto for some reason, and then I was like, I should make a GG coin video where I gaslight them and tell them that all the money in their bank account is now GG coin, and like kind of those, for like creative spark. But in terms of like being performative to the camera as if it were the submissive to get the same reaction of it, as if they were right in front of me. Like I treat my camera like the sub. Like I do a lot of POV, and props help too. Like a lot of POV um, style videos, pretty much all of them. And I've filmed, through my dog cage, like putting the phone in the dog cage and, you know, treating my phone like it that was a real person. I think that's what's helped me
You didn't need to
is
replace your phone very often. It's like getting smacked around.
yeah. I've I've cracked 3 phones with
You're like, I
with
do treat them like my son. I need to fix my light real quick. Okay, so you've talked a little bit about like how coming into kink you had some submissive experiences, you sort of realized it wasn't for you, and I feel like that's something that we also have in common, is that I identify more so as a sadomasochist than as a switch. Um, but like I definitely have switchy experiences, and I do think it makes me a better dom. And I, right, like, because I'm never going to do something to you that I probably haven't, that probably hasn't been done to myself, and that I know what it feels like in my body. And I do think that like felt experience makes someone a better dom, or like a
I
different
agree.
way of understanding, a different way of like tapping into someone's nervous system and understanding. And I'm curious, like, how, yeah, how you think like switching or a history of switching has informed your style of domination.
I think that it's made me respect the sub position as equally, if not more, someone that's in the dom position. The amount, depending on what you're doing, the amount of stress on the body, the psychological, mental, emotional toll BDSM can have on someone in a healing way, in a, boundary pushing way, like it takes a lot of strength to not to feel confident enough to explore your sexuality, to explore, like taboo sex. And I don't think, I think with keyboard warriors, like on Twitter, I think a lot, you can tell when someone hasn't subbed. Honestly, I think you can tell.
I I feel like there's I feel like I've met no, she has bottomed. She's like someone I'm thinking of is like incredibly heavy sadist who also like rarely bottoms, but like also identifies as sadomasochist and like bottoms harder than anyone I know. And I'm thinking of, I think I talk about this because it was like so crucial for me in the formation of my desire. And I think it might have been Daisy Ducati or someone at one of the kink houses and filming, but she was holding a cattle prod and the submissive was like really scared of it. And she just like shocks her tongue and she's like, like Elle from Legally Blonde, like what? Like it's hard and just like electrocutes herself. And like I feel like the shock in the submissive space. I don't know. I think there's something about knowing that you could take whatever you're doling out that makes it sort of transformative for both of you. I at least this is like the experience that I've had. And of course, like not everyone's into everything and not everyone needs to try everything, but I do think I don't know. I think it's like really, really helpful. I know that like I've also hired sex workers before, and that's definitely made me a better dom because I was fucking horrified. I was like so nervous. I like came into the session and she's like, "Where's my gift?" And I'm like, "What? I didn't get you a fucking gift." And she's like, "Tribute." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like I forgot to like hand her the cash immediately, and I was like shaking in my boots, and I was so nervous that I would do something wrong, and I feel like that experience gave me so much more empathy for how scary it is. Like I found who I wanted to see. It took me like 7 months to like send an inquiry, and I was just
That's sweet.
yeah,
That's
I was like
cute.
really nervous. And I feel like I just have so much more compassion for subs. And like you were saying, I was talking with a sub yesterday, I think, who was like, is like coming to terms with the fact that I respect him as a submissive and that like there's not an inherent disrespect there. I'm like, no, like the disrespect I have for you is erotic. Like it is
Yeah.
like within the context of play. And of course there's like definitely like other types of play of people who like I don't have as close relationships with that I might not respect as much, but I think to like approach the divine, to approach a goddess, to like surrender yourself in that way takes a lot of strength, and it's only fun for me if I can like take that strength away from you. Like I'm very uninterested when you don't have that strength to begin
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Uh,
really, yeah.
yeah, so I guess it's something that I think about quite quite a bit, like of the background of being able to know like what you're putting into someone's body. And I think you mentioned it when you were talking about like your clips and like like thinking about like what turns you on and what I don't know,
Yeah,
it just feels like you can be more creative in that way.
definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm curious how you got into latex because when I think of Goddess Gabrielle, I do think of latex, and I feel like there are
Let me show you my closet.
yeah beautiful. When did you get your first piece of latex, and like when did you know? And what did it do for you?
I vividly remember it because I got the suit. I was living in Louisville at the time. I was living in the city, which never again, I'll never live in a city. I don't know. but I loved New York when I visited. Um, so I got my first suit. I immediately go over to my sister's house and I'm like, help me put this on. And I get into it. I get into it and I'm just like, I have like 1,000 selfies from that day. I was
Was it a full
vaping.
cat suit?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
It
your
was my
first piece was a full cat suit. Fetishist all the way, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I remember like dancing in the living room and she's taking these cute videos. It was very wholesome. Like it wasn't erotic in any sort. It was wholesome and like I was like, wow, like I like the way I look. I like the way I feel. For me, latex is comfort, second skin. I feel the most confident ever in it. It just makes me feel powerful and makes me feel sexy and it makes me feel like I can do anything. That's how latex makes me feel.
I love that. I feel like it looks very like superhero, so I love hearing when it makes people feel that way. I have been very opposed. I think to latex, so the fact that I'm wearing some now is remarkable. I feel like I made a clip called "Mommy's Latent Latex Fetish" because I like came to it so late in my in my kink experience. I'm not sure. I think maybe because I like came up in like old guard leather where it was like leather, like the power of like wearing this like animal that's been like passed down through like your leather lineage always felt so interesting to me. And also I don't I wouldn't say that I find latex comfortable. I find the like containment to be like an interesting sensation that I can then eroticize, but it
Yeah.
was I also have a slight latex allergy, so this is me indulging my my you too?
My yeah, I can't use latex condoms at
Me
all.
too. Okay, but it
Yeah,
doesn't bother your skin.
I get really red.
Okay, so we suffer for our pleasure. That's the marker of a sadomasochist.
So good.
I think it was like some combination of those things that I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't like be encased. Like I can't put latex inside me. I probably shouldn't be encased like head to toe in latex. But like, what doesn't a Benadryl fix? You know, like a little.
Funny in it. You look iconic. Like
Oh,
you
well,
look beautiful.
thank you. I think there is something that's so fun about latex that like takes you out of the human, like the way it's been used in like fashion and cinema and like the iconography of superheroes and just like and monsters, you know, like of
Mhm.
the like monstrous feminine and how I don't know, I think it like takes away I love seeing submissives in latex as well, like just like completely anonymous and like just like an inky black void for me to like project my desire onto them. And I
Very
don't know, it's like
dehumanizing.
yeah, it's like dehumanizing, but in an empowering, like not necessarily like a humiliating way, which I feel like they often go hand in hand. Um, okay, so you got your first cat suit and just so it was like what was it about it that made you be like because I feel like latex can be a fetish, it can be like a lifestyle, it can be something you wear for sexy reasons, it can be something you wear for like fashion reasons. And it makes sense to me that so much of your content is in latex if that's like what you feel like happiest and most comfortable with.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if you could talk like a little bit more about like what that is, like how people respond to you in latex, like does it shift something about how you carry yourself?
Um, I think with the latex, so after my first piece, I was like, okay, I'm probably gonna go like pretty balls deep with the collection. And then the more latex I got, the more people started funding more latex. And then it's almost like a phenomenon. Like the more latex I wear, the more people want to see me in latex. And then I'm like, I'm budgeting out like a certain amount of money every month to like fund the latex. And then I have my subs buying, me more latex. And honestly, the number can't talk, but the number one comment that I've gotten with latex and how it's so popular with subs is from superheroes.
Mm.
Like the Black Widow, like the shiny, like those suits are, I think, a big trigger for them. And then thinking back, because I'm a huge nerd, um, I can definitely like understand that. And so whenever I put on the suits, I do feel like a totally different person. I feel like I am Goddess Gabrielle. Like I feel like I am um not the real version of me, but probably the version that like 13-year-old me would be like, wow, you're so cool. You know what I mean? Like that. Okay.
Like well, I think that's so true of like the like persona that we curate. I feel like subs are so like, oh, like I either like I want to know the real you, and I feel like part of at least how I approach like relating to my persona is that it's very much a part of me. It's like the best parts of me and like the worst parts of me transmuted into the best parts of me. You know, like my I got the name Mistress Blunt because I was told I had the subtlety of a metaphoric sledgehammer, which I feel like I've like gone through like a path where I'm like, oh, okay, like maybe I need to be nicer, or like, you know, maybe people like aren't ready to hear these truths that I like so easily see, to being like, no, actually, like I think that was like the appropriate approach and people just need to catch up. um but I do feel like it gives like kind of a container to explore different aspects of yourself, and in ways that, like, you know, as like a human who needs like to sleep and to eat and to feed themselves and to like shower and like, you know, like be involved in their communities or with families, like that's not necessarily the part that we're bringing to like the
Part.
fantasy. And so I feel like the transformation of like, and the ritual of getting dressed, whether it's in latex or lingerie or heels or boots or whatever makes you feel like that most powerful version of yourself, I
Yeah,
do feel like it's a really powerful transformation.
I do too. And I also love your name. I think it's very dommy, like Mistress Blunt. Like I'm blunt. Like I love it.
I
Great
did
name.
also used to smoke a lot more weed, so it definitely had like a double entendre to it.
That's
Yeah. Um, okay, and so what another thing that we also talking about a little bit was about like religious play, blasphemy, and catharsis. And I would love to know a little bit about like your relationship to religion and how you incorporate it into play.
oh, are you okay with a little trauma boop?
Yeah,
Not a
whatever
dump,
you're
but
cool with.
like a boop. Okay. Um, so I grew up very Southern Christian. Very much so, pray the gay away, pray the depression away. For me, and I'm comfortable talking about this. I had I still suffer with like anxiety and depression, but I had pretty severe like not pretty severe issues like growing up. You know, like you're in puberty and then you're mentally ill, and you know whatever. But my family, it was just always, you know, God's the answer, God's the answer. And I remember sitting in my bedroom and praying to God to like cure me, to make me not like girls, um to not be the person that I am, and nobody came. And then around sophomore year of high school, I started thinking for myself, and you know, I saved myself like by being myself. I've never felt so um like something had a hold on me, and then it let go the moment that I was like, I can't change who I am. I don't want to change who I am. You know, I want to be the best versions of myself, but me being, you know, bisexual, pan, queer, like, um, you know, that's not something wrong with me. That's not something to fix. And regardless of the standards of my family, you know, this is who I am. And so, and because I was so down bad for Jesus, like
I love that.
I was so down bad for Jesus. He whenever I started kink, taking it seriously, I started using, once again, kink and stuff to heal my inner child, and now it's like completely turned. I've done like Church of Gigi streams. I do. I just released a clip that's called Salvation, that, like, you need to be like following a goddess who you can indulge in temptation, and you can be yourself, and like without judgment, like, is very healing for me. I fucking love it, and I will do it forever.
I love
That's
that. I feel like it's so powerful too. First of all, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate your vulnerability, and in hearing you talk about it too, and in like even in the honorific that you chose for yourself, and like thinking about you being like young and praying to God, and then becoming like in touch with like that divine spark in yourself, and like the persona Goddess Gabrielle. It's like I can see you like saving yourself from that, and I feel like it's missing from so much religion that like that it like takes you away from your own power and like agency to get you to conform. And I feel like there's something incredibly like powerful and cathartic in that like reclamation of like that individual part of you that is like that has access to like that divinity, and I think that's really beautiful.
Thank you. I get kind of emotional when I think about it, just the progression from then to now, and um, I love the religious play. It is very healing for me every time. Every time I do something, it's very healing.
I love that I like have to look really close to see if you're wearing a cross or a chastity key around your neck.
It's
A
it's a
both.
key. It's like the Tiffany key. One of my subs got it for me.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, I love it. I wear it all the time. It's cute.
That is very cute. Okay, so it was a third variable, which is even better. Um,
I got the keys though. I got the keys to all the cages in my workroom.
I like wearing the Tiffany's one though. It's like symbolic, but doesn't need to
It's
look.
modest and subtle for like everyday vanilla life.
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like something I think a lot about is how our like histories and traumas inform our kinks in the way that society like tries to tell us that it's not okay. I'm thinking of and and the way that like I'm thinking of a, the book um, Gender Without Identity by Anne Pellegrini and Avi Sakatopoulou, which it's like a theory, like a short, dense theory book about psychoanalysis and gender, and like how people should read it because I'm going to totally distill it down to nothing. But basically, that trauma can inform gender, trauma can inform sexuality, and that like that's fine when it's for cis or straight people, but when it's for like queer or trans people, it becomes problematized by society. And I
Yeah.
think that one of the like reframes in the book that I find so useful is that like whether or not one of our desires comes from trauma is much less interesting of a question than like what do we do with that. And I feel like it's so interesting to take blasphemy play as like the answer of like, oh well, like this is incredibly like potent for me, and I am going to play with it because I think play can be like so cathartic. And I think also like so many I can imagine many people like finding like peace and solace in the Church of Gabrielle with like with what you're offering in your ministry, because I feel like
Yeah.
so many people experience similar like traumas and like similar restraints, and I feel like it is where a lot of shame and humiliation and many of the things that we play with in BDSM come from, whether or
Yeah.
not you're growing up like super religious or just under like Christo fascist patriarchy in in the States or around the world.
My like it was so bad. The Like, my grandpa won't eat Oreos because they made a rainbow Oreo. Like, embarrassing, and I eat Oreos all the time. So
Imagine you like an Oreo humiliation clip.
like
But
gosh,
it's, yeah,
yes.
I don't know. It's so interesting to me, like, I don't know, the question of like, what do we do with our trauma? And I think it's like present in so much of the content that we make, and also like why the mommy dom archetype of that like slightly humiliating but like also like very nurturing archetype is also so powerful, even like in what you were talking and about your approach to like blasphemy, and in your church it's like I accept you for being a such a fucking degenerate pervert. Like
Make it wholesome.
the
Like,
pervert
let's
in you.
go. Like,
Yeah.
let's go. Give me all the degenerate perverts. I'll take you all.
Actually come to my bosom.
Yes,
I will
please.
you. Well, I love that you found something that uh really like works for you, and that is so cathartic. I do feel like whether it's religion, through like the constraints of religion, constraints of gender, like I don't know, like forced, I feel like forced bi clips are such like an interesting example of this, of whether or not like the person is gay, if they are bi, whether they like really do want to suck a dick, whether they need the dom to encourage them for like it to triangulate into an erotic experience, or they are like denying part of their sexual, it like, to me it doesn't always matter as long as people are questioning it and like interested in what they're doing with
Yeah.
those desires, because I feel like we are taught to shut them down.
Yeah. I think we give people space to find out who they are. Like,
Yeah.
especially like with societal norms, like I think that we do like a humane service for some people, like giving them a safe space to figure out who they are, like the forced buy stuff. Like, and a lot of people probably fetishize it, but for some people, like it might be they need to like even have the conversation. Exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I've found that a lot in my I've done a lot of like, I've called it gender play rather than sissification, and I think like I'll use the key terms because I want people to find me, but like in how I like write about gender play, I don't do a ton of very specific humiliation with it, and I'm like, if you're humiliated by this, like let's use that as like a fertile seed. And I think because of that, I've had a lot of people who are like questioning their gender, or have like a flexible relationship with their gender, or like understand gender to be like largely a social construct, and most people are somewhere on a continuum of gender and like less confined. And I've had a lot of people like explore their gender with me through the context of BDSM and
I
like
love
gender
that.
play and
Yeah.
sissification clips. And I find it, I I wonder what part is like the gentle mommy encouragement and like less hard humiliation that like separate, right? Because I think there's many reasons to be into something. Like you're questioning your gender, you think being a woman is submissive, so like getting in touch with your feminine side like allows you to submit, or like you do have like thoughts and ideas about your gender and want to explore that. um but yeah, I don't know. I agree with you. I think there's so much space given to be given for people to explore in that way.
Yeah. And I feel like for everybody, it's so individualistic with their journey. Like exactly what you're saying. Like some people find it humiliating to be considered like a sissy. Some people find it liberating. They're like, maybe this is like a step towards like, like on my trans journey. I feel like it's so individualistic for everybody. And the best part, in my opinion, is that beyond consensual, safe play, there's no moral code book to practice BDSM
Yeah,
because everybody's on their own individual journey for different reasons. They want to play a different way, a certain way that is molded completely to cater to them and what they need. So, yeah.
I love that. I have to grab a charger, but I have a
Okay.
have a thought on that.
Okay.
Okay, so I love this idea of like, I don't know if it's quite what you said, but of like individual ethics. And I actually like, right, there's like safe, sane, and consensual, risk aware kink. And then I think like, I think it's like time to move like slightly beyond that, because I think like when we think about risk, we're often not talking about like the emotional risk of the things that can come up in like intimate relationships, or when you're being vulnerable, that like you could never anticipate. And so I think, I don't know that I have the language for it, but it's sort of like being open to what happens when we do risky things, and like not just being like, okay, like I accept that like harm might happen, but being like, oh, like what rupture is necessary, like kind of like stepping into the wound and being like, what can come from this, and like, sure, there might be like opportunities for repair, or potentially not, but that like edge and boundary being like what's what I find like incredibly interesting, and like the most profound, like transformative scenes. And I like the idea of like us being our own moral agents, of like, and playing with people who have similar ethos and like ethics behind what they're interested in doing.
Yeah, like I feel like we have our own moral compasses. And I also feel like that moral compass is dictated by like, you and whoever you're playing with. Like so and that's just like where communication is like key. And sometimes you aren't prepared for like a reaction. You can prepare in every way possible, but then, this thing happens, or like they have this emotional reaction, like neither one of you could have prepared for that. And then it's just navigating from there. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think about a lot this situation I had when I was playing with someone, and we had like a very heavily, it was filmed, so we like had like a very heavily negotiated scene. And then I think I said something that was within bounds, or I think it was, I like took my hand off to put it on someone else, and it just
Mhm.
like, you know, it never would, they might now share that that's something that would not feel great in the context of the scene, but they would have had no knowledge of that prior to it. So it's like both in that rupture, there's space to like learn about yourself. And also, I think it's so important when like negotiating scenes, and that like being prepared for the unexpected emotionally. And like, what I like to ask, like, like what do we do when something comes up, like not if it does, because it's just, if I don't know, I think if you're doing good play and like seeking transformation, like
Yeah.
something is gonna come up, uh
Yeah.
if you're like really in touch with yourself.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I don't think, like for me, it's never the thing that I thought it would be, like it's never
I
something I would have thought to
yeah,
pull
like I've had one time kind of similar to that, where like a reaction, that the sub had a reaction that we both weren't expecting, and we just kind of navigate it from there. It's kind of crazy, like once again how healing or triggering BDSM can be, and it sometimes the reactions are random. Like
I I love what you said, how healing or triggering too, because I feel like they're not necessarily like mutually
exclusive.
exclusive if you're able to like navigate it to, or like be seen and held in that trigger. And
Yeah.
yeah, um like I don't think like I think BDSM can also like just be horny and perverted and like
Yes.
have no like transformative impact on someone's life, other than like getting you off and like feeling
Yeah.
amazing in that way. But I also do think like for people who are interested in going a step deeper, there really is, I don't know, I think it can either be like a fun sexy modality, or just like, or a way to get to know yourself better.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people just need their balls hit to come, and then it is what it is. There's no story behind it. It's just hot.
Exactly. Exactly. Or they don't want to know the story behind it.
Yes. There's a lot of stuff in denial. Let's
And
talk about
it doesn't need to for it to be erotic, like
Yeah.
I I keep telling this story, but I was chatting with someone on my fan site, and like I think because I come from like a lifestyle background, I really value and like you know like I have personal submissives, I have like people doing service in every aspect of my life, from like cleaning my house to like working on my search engine optimization to like a sub who's my tailor, and just like have like a beautiful like harem of submissives who are like very useful. Oh my god, I don't know where I was going with this. What did we say right
I
before?
like yeah, I like hearing every detail. Please tell me.
Maybe I'm just bragging. I don't know. I
Please
feel like it was.
tell me.
I Where was the point? Oh, okay. I found it. Okay, thank you for bearing with me. Okay, and so because I like have this lifestyle background where I like to like extract the use from people, and like my expertise is in submissive training more so than like a specific like fetish. So when someone was chatting with me on my fan site, I was trying to get to know them and like have a personal connection with them. And he goes, "Excuse me, ma'am, I'm just trying to jerk off." I'm like, okay, like, okay, I forgot my bad. He's like, "This is a Wendy's." Like, um,
Damn, that's kind of funny.
really funny. I was like, you're right, okay.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, but I was just like, I'm so interested in the DS connection and the dominance and submission more so than like it becomes erotic for me through power exchange and through like actual power exchange. And I think one of the ways that happens, and something else we talked about chatting about, is financial domination and the role that plays in our practice. And for me, financial domination is like one of the ways to make power most concrete. And I'm curious, like, how you play with femdom and findom, and like how you see them being related, different, or integrated into your domination practice.
So I think the origin and the intensity of financial domination stems from, once again, societal standards. You know, the more money you have, the more successful, you know, people in society eyes, like a doctor would be more appealing than like a restaurant worker, you know, like um, it's almost like it's like a tier system. It's like where are you in society? And because we have such a strong like hold on the value of money, giving up your money, I think, is one of the most powerful forms of power exchange. Like think of all the money you have, and think about, you know, giving it away to somebody. That's an insane exchange. And I think people
Also a
um
religious one, right? Like if
yes,
we're talking like
yes.
driving it, like fits financial domination fits squarely in religious blasphemy play.
In my streams, I'm literally like, add to my offering plate, like, you know, send it all. Like it's yeah. So yeah, I think financial domination is one of the most powerful things, forms of power exchange and femdom.
Do you
Whenever it's
remember when you like first got acquainted with findom, or like had like your first?
um, so it was whenever I started taking the online stuff more seriously, and so I had a sub, and he would, you know, tip me like very often, and that wasn't abnormal. But he was like, you know, I want like, tell me how much you want. And I was like, okay. And I was like, go get me the TV off of my wish list. And then he did it, and I was like, it was like a $600 TV. And then I was like, okay. And then because of that, I started promoting on like my Twitter. Like I would screenshot people sending me money. And then I want to say within the past 2 years, my foothold in financial domination has gotten a lot more extreme. Like it's very direct. It's very direct domination. You know, if you want access to me, you have to spend. Like we are a luxury to have. Like we're not a need. We're not the toothbrush in your bathroom. Like we are a luxury. And so the it's like the more it kept happening, the more I'm almost like addicted to it. I'm almost like addicted to the fetish.
Do you need a Findom addiction clip series?
I'm being reactive right now. I'm like, I need it. I need a sim right now.
uh,
Yeah,
oh, I love that framing too of like, I feel like there's a way that, like, I don't know, it's like that professional domination is also like the performance of a submissive's desires rather than like a manifestation of like a conglomerate of like also like our desires. And so like hearing you talk about it, like, like of feeling that same frenzied state is like how I've also described it with my submissives of like, just like someone might enter like a flow state when they're sending to me like that same high, like I'm getting that same high and that same dopamine hit. And I
yeah,
think it's both one of the most like tangible forms of power exchange. And I like what you were talking about. Like, we do live in a capitalist society where money dictates so much. And when I talk about FinDom, I'm also like, this is financial domination is the only exchange in a DS dynamic that I can think of where I actually walk away from the situation with more power than I started. So
exactly.
so the power exchange is like made concrete by the transaction where even like, in if I'm like kicking someone in the balls repetitively and like they are feeling very disempowered, I'm feeling very powerful in that situation, nothing has been changed or transformed outside of that play in that space and like someone like understanding what their place is in my life. But when I leave the dungeon, nothing has, I don't want to say that it's not meaningful. It can be like emotionally meaningful or like spiritually meaningful or like incredibly connective to have that type of experience with someone. But the material realities of my life have not changed unless there is a monetary exchange or someone is, that's why I also like service, because I think that service is a way to engage in shifting the material realities of someone's life,
Hmm.
even if they're not in a position to engage regularly in financial domination. But I'm interested in power, and so without power I find play quite uninteresting. And
Yeah,
yeah, and you talking about like, like getting to see like someone sending you like that $600 TV, and then you have that TV in your house and you think about it and you post about it and then more people are excited to send to
yeah,
you. Like, it makes you feel kind of drunk.
yeah. Like it's intoxicating. Like beyond like the financial or materialistic gain of financial domination. Like I once again, it turns me on. It it enriches my life, adds value to my life, and takes away that value from them. The power exchange. I think it's so hot. I have an Amex card of one of my subs, and I even just getting a $5 coffee, I'm like, yeah, bitch. Like it's almost like I'm fucking them right there. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I do, it is. It like, and I think that's why BDSM can be so powerful, because it can turn like this mundane experience of going to get like coffee that you do every day and like of the take it out of the everyday and transform it into this like spiritual connection. I have one of my subs cards and I have like a little sticker for it that has a little rubber ducky in bondage in it. And whenever I
oh,
like pay for something with it, I get hit on all of the time when I use the card, which I think you would appreciate of knowing, of people being like, "Ooh, like I really like that card." Like, and
I love that.
yeah, just like they should know. Yeah, I think it is an interesting way of like infusing someone into those everyday actions of service as well.
Yeah. Like it's a big form of service submission, power exchange. It hits a lot of boxes. And it's also just people who are like truly into the sending of money, like it really does turn them on. I've seen like beyond my frenzy and greed, like seeing their reactions to being like, look at this sexy number goddess, look, we're at this one. And it's just it's sweet and sexy. And I
Wholesome.
definitely, yeah, wholesome. I orgasm so hard too. sins.
I
So
know, and I do feel like I'm happy you're saying that because I feel like despite femdom being like based on like the supposed pleasure of women, it's so often about like the orgasm of a submissive. And so I think like when we are able to engage in activities that like really touch something for us and like are really arousing for us, it's so exciting. And I think like our subs know, like if
yeah,
it's because I have that same experience. Like I want to, like my phone, I like the Cash App notification, like my phone vibrates with it too. So like if you're sending and sending, like it's like almost like a vibrator. It like totally transforms my phone into this other device and this like erotic device.
that's a hot POV. You should film a POV like that.
Okay, that's a good.
See, I'm telling you, it just goes like
I love it. Yeah, because I totally could come from enough if it was coming in enough. I do have a feeling that the payment processors would interfere, would like cock block me. But
payment
that's something. Do you have this experience too? I'm like in the middle of something really hot. I'm like jerking off and like getting all these sends and demanding more and like just feeling like greedier and greedier and like wanting like the more and more of it all. And then all of a sudden they're like my bank and I'm like, fuck your bank.
Yes, yes. That has happened a couple times, and every time it happens, I'm just like, it almost kills the vibe. Like it almost completely kills the vibe.
I know. I'm like, you need to transform it because then you have to call your bank and like don't get them involved. But like it is, I do think it's an interesting point in the like in the exchange too when it's because it's also like a notification that it's gone past the point of your regular spending. It's gone past the point of what your
Yeah,
bank has determined you should be spending your
yeah,
money on, and then you have to go past that barrier to continue the exchange. So I think it can be like a type of bondage, but it is like I feel like a tech bondage which can be hard to navigate when you're
no,
like jerking
total sense. It's a type of bondage.
like be jerking off while on the phone with your bank.
Yeah.
Very complicated. Do you like okay? Do you see femdom without findom? Like, I guess like what is the relationship between the two for you? And now that you've been doing it, and like you said, like you have like more of a foothold in financial domination, like and like it right like as we like progress in our career like the barrier to entry gets higher which I feel like is not quite findom but is can be like erotically related.
Um, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I guess just like do you see femdom without findom like what?
Honestly, no.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Um, I think for lifestylers, I know that there is this like kind of divide, this kind of like war between uh pro doms and like lifestylers usually. Like some lifestylers don't believe that you should make any sort of money off of
Oh,
BDSM and stuff.
it taints it, the purity of
Yeah.
domination.
I don't get that at all because sex work is literally the oldest job of all time. Like,
Also, in like BDSM leather communities, so much of the relationships and like were like funded by like queer and trans sex working people. So the fact that it's like there, it's so like I know exactly what you're talking about of that like old guard. I'm gonna say like cis white dude who's also like the how do I know you're really into it if you're
yeah,
getting paid? Or like, how do I know this is really what you want? Rather than, oh, I actually want to surrender power. And this is an area where I have power to surrender.
yeah. It's really disappointing to see the divide. I think I got off topic a little bit, but
No, I
um,
like where you brought us.
um, I genuinely do not think that you can't have femdom without like financial domination, honestly. Even if it's not necessarily a service that you provide or participate in often, in order for you to be a pro, you kind of have to kind of be making money. And I think that even the act, even though paying for services is not the same as financial domination, the financial aspect of it, I think, is once again a power exchange. Like you're paying for your needs to be met. You know, let's say like you're, you know, you want a no strings attached dynamic, or you don't have, you know, the opportunities right now for like play all the time, so you visit this one girl once a month. You know what I mean? Like I think it, the paying for the service is a type of power exchange, and that's money. So I don't think that you can have, this is my opinion. What do you think?
I feel pretty similarly to you. And I think it's like, I am uninterested in power exchange where someone is just going through the motions of performing the surrendering of power to me. So, something that I do a lot in my submissive training, I love giving people findom fetishes. Like, I think one of my skills as a dom is like instilling my fetishes in other people and like getting them. I have on my blog like this like 7,000 words on financial domination. It's like my manifesto, my treatise, like my magnum opus. And really, the TLDR is like, this is why you should be into financial domination. And I love doing that work because I feel like it is so taboo, right? It's so taboo, right? Men are like taught that they should be afraid of the woman, the trophy wife or the gold digger or the woman who's like just going after them for the money. And I think it can be cathartic to like flip that and just completely surrender to it. And I think it can also be cathartic to like understand why that's so vilified, because women are supposed to be kept as meek, women are supposed to be subservient, like you are supposed to be controlling women. And when women have access to these financial resources, they need to be vilified so that they can be controlled. I feel like this goes back to what we're talking about religion too. And I'm thinking of, I'm doing research right now, so I've been reading a lot of theory, but of
I love
Sylvia
it. Tell me more.
Federici's work, Wages Against Housework, and like the talking of compensation for women's labor and reproductive labor that is largely expected to be free. And so I think femdom, maybe not financial domination, but femdom cannot happen for me without actual power exchange. Otherwise, I'm
Mhm.
just performing for someone's fantasy. And for me, especially like when I'm playing with someone online, I think that financial exchange is one of the most concrete ways of playing with power,
Yeah.
that someone can feel like the ramifications and the impact of my power over them, as well as like surrendering, like as you're saying, like to like the offering play, it's like passed around and like tithe. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm interested in that power exchange and having people eager to surrender. So I'm not like, I
It's,
don't need, go ahead.
sorry.
No,
It's like a complicated concept, you
it
know?
yeah, like I don't need people, I don't need submissives who get off every time they send to me, or understand themselves to have a financial domination fetish, or like I don't always pursue financial domination with like the intention to like ruin someone or like completely like wipe them out. Like I actually really enjoy sustainable
Yeah.
dynamics. And I think people often think of findom, which this I do actually do this less often, of like the send till you have nothing left. I think it can
Hmm.
be like a hot exchange, but I also, as I said, from my trying to get to know people on my fan sites and them being like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Um, I'm interested in like ongoing relationships. So I think for me, it has to be, so they don't have to like get off anytime they send me something. They're like, that's a bonus if I can convince them that they should, but they do need to be invested in my success
Hmm.
and invested in their surrender. And so if there's other ways for them to do that, I'm open. But it is one of the most profound ways.
I exactly. I agree, because you can't really serve if you're not. selfless desires. If you're not willing to sacrifice, I don't think that you're in a position to truly serve like a goddess or a mistress or whoever.
I like the word sacrifice there a lot because I think that is what financial domination is, like at its core is like the greed, the desires, and the like worship of a dom through that sacrifice and
Mm-hmm.
surrender, which is really religious. Like I feel like the religious and findom, I feel like part of what's so fun about it for me is that it subverts so many of these cultural norms where I can like demand not only compensation but like a continual more and more of like desire and resources and abundance in this way that I've been taught not to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You hit it on the head.
And I find that like, I don't know if empowering is the right word, but hot definitely is.
I agree.
um, okay. And so, okay, so we've talked about, I feel like we've done a lot in this, which maybe is great because it hits, I feel like we're both like deeply in our pervert zone and like have so much
Yeah.
interest. And I think my last question is we talked a little bit about like home wrecking fantasies. So I feel like we've talked about like the nurturing mommy dom, the sensual sadist, the like findom, the like religious blasphemy play, and then there's like this more mean archetype, this like ruinous archetype, and I'm curious a little bit about that. I just finished shooting a home wrecking series. I feel like I leaned too deeply into my like nurturing mommy dom that like my incredibly evil like bitchy self of like want to ruin your life and like fuck you up forever got kind of tainted. So I was like, okay, we need balance. But I'm curious what that's like for you.
This was the question that I was most nervous about.
I
And also,
almost skipped it.
I, so I've done home wrecking clips, I've done home wrecking fantasy sessions, but I've never, ever, ever crossed the line of from fantasy to reality. And I see a lot of girls and men, and theys and thems. And I've seen a lot of people in the community post screenshots of texting someone's spouse, um, and it's so hard because like I don't do dom wrecking or anything like that. Like I'll say like elitist stuff for the brand, but I'm very much so like if you need me, I'm here. Whatever I can do to help you, because people helped me. And so like when I think of home wrecking, it's usually because of the client base, men, which most of them are with women, a lot of them anyway. And then I think like fuck, like I do have sometimes like a moral qualm with myself of like, yes, I can't help if like a married person comes around um, and sessions with me, but sometimes like if they're wanting a very like intense like home wreck like fantasy stuff, sometimes I will turn them down, especially like if they're like wanting me to like incognitally like email their girlfriend or
Like kind
it
of
kind of
goes
makes
blackmail and
yes, and it kind of makes me feel bad and it makes me scared. And but I also find the fantasy pretty hot too, to like almost isolate, almost like a emotional isolation, like bondage or something, like isolating a sub to like to truly like dedicate their whole lives to me regardless of the consequences. Like I also like that too. So I just kind of go back and forth on that.
yeah. I get that. I feel like it's interesting where like fantasy rubs up with like your own moral compass. I have no issue with it, but I also don't like I'm also never going to involve someone's partner in
Yeah.
something. Like I'm not gonna like that doesn't feel consensual to me. So I feel like I also like my earliest exploration of kink was like uh teasing men with girlfriends to the point where I'd like have them like pinned against a wall and like them begging to fuck me just so I could get them to admit that they would cheat on their girlfriend with me and then I'd leave. So like I didn't know what I was doing. It
That's
was really hot for me. Like I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, or like have language around like tease and denial, but like because of the boundary of girlfriend that I was going to like I was gonna respect that whether or not they would. Um
yeah,
not that I always did, but most of the time. Like it added this like layer of like bondage within it and like restraint that allowed me to have like a lot of fun there. And I don't know, I recently shot a home wrecking series that was like really fun, and it's like not something that I would do in real life of like, you know, like I'm having them like put in AirPods during sex, and it's like, well, so they can like listen to the sound of my voice while they're fucking their wife. And like if they do, that's on them. I think people like need to like be responsible for what their actions are. And while you might
yeah,
want me to ruin your marriage and fuck up your life, like you're the only one with the power to do that, especially because like I'm not gonna be
yeah.
speaking to your wife unless she is reaching out to
That's
me.
such a hot. That's such a hot video, by the way. I'm like very inspired. Yeah, like the fantasy, like everything you're saying, sexy. The reality is where it scares me. Like if they showed up at my front door and they're like, I left her. I'm like, who are you? Like I think I would just. That's where it gets me. But I love the concept. I love the fantasy. It is hot.
And I have one sub right now who's like, why am I into, you know, who's like questioning like why they might be into it, and like is like it's just a fantasy. I'm like, I'm aware, like we're allowed to have fantasies that like we don't want to happen. Like I think right,
Yeah,
like just like I was talking about like the gender play and people approaching for like all of the, you know, like maybe you just think it's hot to like jerk off in panties, like, and there's nothing else to see here. Or like maybe you think it's hot to think about like this aspect of your life being like completely like ruined and destroyed by this powerful force that like you don't have the power to make the changes you want in your life. So the
mhm,
only thing that you can like focus on and fantasize about is this like external power coming in and like wreaking destruction on your life in a way that you'll see like will free you. And I think for a lot of people it doesn't necessarily mean that their relationship is bad for them. And I think it gives people like this feeling of like, oh, like, does this mean like I like hate my wife? Or like, does this mean that I hate my partner or something like that, that I'd fantasize about that? I'm like, you know, like it can, like, there's a reason for the fantasy, but the fantasy is often not necessarily like the thing you actually want to
yeah,
happen. Like there's
exactly.
a reason you're fantasizing about it. And again, I think it comes back to like, oh, like, well, what are you going to do with that information? Like, are you going to make steps to make your marriage better? Or are you just going to keep buying my content and blaming your wife for the issues in your relationship?
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's
yeah.
I need to know like outside of the video, I need to know is homewrecking something that you like consider you specialize in, like the fantasy?
You know, I think this might be my first home wrecking clip series I've made, but like it goes back to like my very like roots of kink. So I think I like I got off my path and I need to like get back on the straight and narrow.
I'm gonna buy
So,
all of them. I'm gonna buy all of them.
it's I this is inspiring me to make one of like my early chaos that
Please do.
I would
Please.
I would muster it, because it's just it was. And like I had no search terms to like look up the kink that I was interested in because I had no idea. It was just the like distillation of power that I could see with the restraint, like with like the girlfriend as bondage kind of. So like they would kind of be trying to say no, and I could like watch their resolve like slowly go away over and over again until like I either got what I wanted or could like
Yeah.
be like, no thanks. I just wanted to know that you would fuck me. Like, I just wanted to know
Um,
you would ruin your relationship for me.
it, that is one of the hottest things I've ever heard, actually.
I'm flattered. I'm flattered. I was so young and evil.
I love it. We need
Well, I'm
more
glad
ideas.
I asked the question. You almost got away without having to answer, but it is interesting when they like, I don't know, when like, I don't know. I think of it kind of like I'll make an I can't even say the word executionary. Do you know what the word I'm trying to say? Like I'm gonna kill you, Dom. I don't know that I can say that, but
I've been exploring that recently. One of my subs, probably for about a year now, I've been doing a lot of private sessions of that kink.
it's hot, and it's like,
Yeah,
am I gonna do it? Like I don't want to go to jail. Like no, thank you. Like, but or
that's true.
like so many fantasies don't need to become reality, and I feel like people get caught up in that of like, like what does it mean if I want this rather than like, oh, I want this, like what am I going to do with that, which sounds
Yeah,
like hiring like a hot dom to explore your like death drive is the way to go.
yeah. One of my clients is very into like the poison ivy, like
Mm,
kiss of death kind of thing. Um, like dark lipstick, like the lipstick has poison in it. I'm gonna poison you, and you know, I feel like I learn something new every day. Like I never stop learning, I never stop evolving, and I never stop being turned on by all of these like weird shit that the subs bring up to me, and I'm like, okay, I think I could maybe be into that.
I know, I
Like
love
it's fun.
that. Yeah, I think it's fun when like people can convince each other this thing is hot, like not even like persuade them, but just like their desire is so like potent and exciting that like, it's contagious. It's like, oh, like
Yeah,
I wasn't into that before, but like seeing how into that you were did something for me that like
yeah,
moved me to relate to it kind of differently. um
yeah.
and I feel this that way in this conversation. It was so lovely to chat with you and get to know you a little bit better. And I just love meeting fellow perverts who are like in it for the, for the perversion.
This has been, I couldn't have asked for a better first interview experience. So thank you so much. This has been
Oh,
great.
yes, I'm so
Thank you.
excited to chat with you. And if people want to find you, where can they do so? People want you to ruin their lives or join your
You
church.
can you send my $50 tribute, and then you can message me on Twitter, or Instagram, or one of my paid sites. Loyal Fans is my new primary now.
Amazing. I love that. Same here. And if you want to find me, you can Google Mistress Blunt and click on all of the variety of links. I'm on most social media. A lot of it's catfishes. So be sure you're talking to the right person or fill out my contact form. Thank you again, Goddess Gabrielle. This was so lovely to chat with you.
Thank you so much.